Okay, so I am here with Jack Greco. Jack, you have a lot of titles. The one that most people know is one of the co-founders of ACV Auctions. We'll get in a little bit later to what that exactly is. But thanks a lot for doing this for me. You're my first guest on the new podcast, and I've got another podcast that's really focused on Vermont and outdoor sports and things of that sort. But I've been dying to talk to more people in the business world. And when I was putting this together, the first person on my list that I wanted to interview was you. And so
that is flattering, Nathan. Thanks.
Well, I don't know a whole lot of people that are co-founders of a company that has a valuation of 1.5 billion with a B. And I'm super interested in a lot of investing topics that you have a ton of experience. I want to dig into some of that because that's not my wheelhouse, and it surely is yours. But why don't you, when someone says, what do you do? It's nice to meet you. How do you introduce yourself?
It's interesting. A lot of times I say, I pick up trash in the neighborhood, or, I'm the father of a very adventurous 5-year-old boy. But a lot of what I do, Nathan, is like, I try and give other people the opportunities I got. Right. I am a founder. I'm one of the co-founders. There was 3 of us at ACV. I also have been part of the launching, either in like a founder role or, kind of a buddy in the beginning role of another couple dozen companies in everything, right? Sneakers, cereal, material science, biotech. And so I kind of play this generalist role. And a lot of what I do is I say, look, I intentionally see a lot of different things. And so I'm kind of like a bumblebee, this pudgy little bumblebee that bounces between, and I can kind of share where I've been, right? And in the experience I have with people, what I get is I get more experience with them I can share with somebody else, So, I like to, if I gave you my little opening paragraph that I give people when they announce me, it would say like mentor, founder, advisor, angel, father, or something like that. But the truth is, like, I've been really fortunate, and I've kind of made my way through life just helping people. My mom always said, like, do what you love and then find a way to make money. And what I loved was like creating things. I have a pretty high risk tolerance, so I don't mind taking what would be considered like aggressive gambles. I got a pretty good work ethic from my parents, and I kind of mix that all together. And starting companies and entrepreneurship is kind of the art form of which I'm currently expressing myself in. It's probably a good way to put it.
Well said.
The older I get, the more I realize I'm a creative. And most guys that are a CFO and COO of as many different projects as I am, you wouldn't normally tie those two things together. But that's the guy you're talking to today. So.
Yeah, and I sense that immediately. I guess it would be appropriate to give a little bit of background. I imagine most of the people who are going to be listening or watching this the first time probably know me. And we met through a very interesting set of circumstances. There's a gentleman in my town who is a private equity investor and in the telecommunications industry. And we got friendly, and I had him on my podcast. And of course, after we're done, we have a lot of conversations about business. He's curious about our business and, what I do. And I'm curious about how private equity works. So we became friends. And he said, I've got somebody I want you to meet. And he introduced me to a friend of his who is a private equity investor in all different types of industries. So he set up a phone conversation with him, and I had an hour and a half phone conversation with him. And he says to me, I have somebody you ought to meet. And he introduces me to one of your friends, Devin, the CEO of SpinCar. And so I had the same experience. I had a phone call with Devin. We talked and we hit it off. And Devin says, I got somebody I want you to meet. And he introduced me to you. And we did the same thing. The first time we met on the phone, we with a Zoom call, and we chatted for an hour and a half about all things entrepreneurial. And then after, we had an opportunity to spend the weekend together. And just to what you were saying is, I'm still a little blown away at the willingness and the openness and the eagerness that you had to spend your time without any expectation of any result, just curious where it might go, to spend the time with me and give me some other input on how my business might move to the next level, which has been a huge topic for me. So everybody knows what our background is. I've been incredibly appreciative of the time and the advice you've given, and you've already helped set my little software company, my experiment, off in a little bit different direction. And you said to me something interesting when we were having this whole conversation. You said to me, you don't really need to do anything different. You just need a little bit different set of advisors to give you some different perspective. And the fact that you were willing to jump into that role without immediate clear expectations of what that might mean for you personally impressed the hell out of me. And I understand from our conversations, you have this relationship with a ton of people.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I didn't grow up in a gutter, but there were definitely times when I was younger when there wasn't a lot to, like me and the people around me didn't have a lot. So when you go through those periods, you realize you don't have a lot and you laugh just as much and you have just as much fun. And then you realize you don't need a lot. Right. And Nathan, I think you and me share this, like suffering is part of life. Right. And it's hard, it's a trite saying that like it galvanizes you into who you are. But what I realized, like, no matter how much or little I had, it didn't matter if I had people around me, I was relevant, I was able to add value. Like I think by talking. So like in talking to you, that's how I think. And so I can't think by myself. I mean, I can, but the real creative part of me is a little bit of a showman and it doesn't perform without an audience. Right. So,
man, I have the same exact issue. I seem to manifest by verbalizing.
Yep. Yeah. And it's, and we end up being these creatures, these synergistic creatures that like, when you get around other people, you're able to create something much more, it's the 1 + 1 = 3 adage, but, I mean, first of all, it's really flattering that you say that. And I'm proud that you say that because like, I've realized that, it doesn't matter. I have this karma-like view of the world. Right. And so like, you put good out, it's like you throw a boomerang and the boomerang doesn't come back the same direction you threw it, and sometimes it doesn't come back and sometimes someone else's boomerang comes to you and sometimes your boomerang hits a coconut out of the tree and you have lunch. I mean, you never know what's going to happen.
Or it falls on your head.
Right. Or it falls on your head and then you eat it for lunch. Right. I mean, whatever ends up happening. But, it's, I have been lucky enough to get to the point where I'm not starving. Although I think I've basically just ate leftovers the last couple of days. But, you got to not mind eating leftovers. That's my grandmother always told me that. Right. But, it's like you're an enjoyable person. And I don't spend a lot of time with people that I don't enjoy. Right.
It's a good rule.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it depends how you get compensated. Right. I mean, I realize I'm not wherever the hell I'm going after this. Hopefully it's not hell, but I'm not taking any of the money with me. I'm not taking even like, I went through these phases in my life where, when I was a kid, you want people to respect you, right? It's not about money. It's like respect. And then you're like broke when you graduate college or in college, and then you want some money. And then you realize like what equity is. Now you want some equity because equity is like power. And then you get to the point where you're like, all right, like I'm respected because of the person I am. I always got enough money if I got an abundance mindset. Like power is in the eyes of the beholder, right? Like, so what am I doing all this for? And now I'm to the point in my life, and I'm sure it'll change, where like I'm trying to push as much positive out. I'm 37, which is on the doorstep to 40. No, and that's okay. It's okay. Yeah, the oldest World War II veteran just passed away last week. 112.
Oh my!
And I'll send you a thing that they actually did a thing on him when he was like 110 and 111, and I was like, man, what a guy. But I'm at this point now where it's just like I just want to. I realized that there was a passage, and it was from I can't remember what it is, but I think it was from a book called like The Entertainer. And I heard it at a funeral probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it talks about how like, I literally have it written down. It's in my wallet somewhere. But it talks about how we each generate through our lives our own particular brand of magic, right? And like, I've now gotten to the point where I've honed this like wacky, quirky, odd, eccentric, rebellious, disgusting, phenomenal type magic that like, I just want to play with it as much as I can. And that's where I'm in my life right now. I just want to enjoy it, and I want to enjoy doing that with other people as much as I can. So
That's cool.
To be honest, like I like you and I respect you, but you happen to be like, you were a dance partner. I got something out of it too, right? So.
Well, that's the thing, that I think we all have so many different needs. And I think if you get fortunate enough to earn enough money, or to be in a position where you stop worrying about money, and you don't need a lot of money to stop worrying about money. There's two different mindsets. But once you get to that position, usually it means you have enough time, you're fortunate enough that you can actually think about higher level thinking and what's more important. When your immediate needs are met, food, shelter, love, the things that we need, then we get to the point where we go, okay, what's my purpose? Why am I really doing this? And the other thing that I think that comes with being successful financially, hopefully, most of the people that I know, regardless of the stereotype that's out there, most of the people that I know that have made a lot of money understand that money is the byproduct of everything that came before it. It's the byproduct of creating value. And there's a million different ways to create value. You can create value just with your opinion, with your help, with your contacts, financially. And then from the business side, you create value by reducing friction in an industry and making things better and creating something that people want, whether it's a service or a product. And once you get fully squared in on the idea that money is just the byproduct, first focus on creating value at some level, be worth something to other people. And then you get to start thinking about, well, higher level shit. Like not only that, but who can I help? Why am I here? What are my skills and how can I apply them? And the funny thing I find is that almost everybody I know that is successful in that way has that giving attitude. And I don't know where the stereotype came from that rich people are assholes or super self-centered. Most of the people I know that are financially very secure are exactly the opposite. I think it's an unfortunate stereotype, probably comes from gigantic monoliths, and that kind of thing. But
and I mean, let's be honest, now that it's settled, right? I drive through Massachusetts, I see one bad driver and I say they're all massholes, right? Yeah. I mean, like that's what happens. It exists, and it is. I think there is probably a big difference between if you create the value yourself. I mean, I grew up in a town, Canandaigua. It's one of the Finger Lakes. It's beautiful. You and I, last time we got together, it was near another one of them over in Skinny Atlas. But, I went to school with some really rich kids that never did anything, right? I mean, like they were born and it was like their hand was 5 aces. I was like, how do you even get that? Right.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's something to be said for people that build and create. And look, somebody told me this a long time ago. Money makes you more of who you already are, right? So, I mean, part of it could also be, I mean, think about it. I mean, you're in the nature, you're in the mountains, you surround yourself with people you enjoy. Chances are the first derivative off them, you'll enjoy them also, right? I mean, like, correct. So it's probably a little bit of a phenomenon of kind of the way you've somehow created your own microcosm, and how you get out there because, I mean, like anything else, I'm sure that there are as many assholes that are rich as there are assholes that are poor, right? I mean,
Rogan talks about this a lot. What he says basically, if you get 100 people together, one of them's an asshole. Okay, so right. No, it doesn't matter. Like just somewhere between 1 and 10 people out of every 100 are assholes. So that's not that big of a deal if you only have 100 people. You got one asshole. But if you got 100,000 people, that's a lot of assholes. So it's all relative.
That's true. It's really true, man. It's absolutely true.
Yeah. And you can focus on that one asshole. You can focus on the other 99 people that aren't assholes.
That's right. That's right, man.
So, you know, you bring up an interesting topic, and we never talked about this before, but you just really hit a chord with me that one of my biggest frustrations as a entrepreneur, you know, if I'm going to slap that label on myself, is that I do something I call throwing sparks. And that's the name of this podcast, because that's exactly where this comes from. I'm really good at generating ideas, and I'm terrible with the execution of it. I still feel like the 13-year-old kid in math class that has an overdue assignment, and I will do the very last second because that seems to be where I work the best. But what you said before is that when I really work the best is by hopefully convincing other people that my wacky ideas are doable and achievable, and finding a crew of people who want to help me achieve that shared vision. My company started with me in my garage, but the only reason it's where it is now is because I was able to sell people on the idea that we could be a motorcycle shop that told the truth. And that was a very compelling thing to join for people who had been in the motorcycle industry that had seen plenty of examples of them not, of other motorcycle shops or places they worked not doing that. So, but it leads to what I was getting at. It leads to a lot of frustration for me. I feel like I've got great ideas and I need somebody else's help to make them happen, because I'm an idea founder. I throw sparks and I hope some of them turn into fires. How have you been able, I mean, you've done a lot of things with a lot of businesses. How have you been able to get other people to join you and help you and put the people that are better than you around you in the areas that you're not an expert?
So that's interesting. I mean, so I think if not all, almost all of the projects, companies, or endeavors, or whatever you want to call them, that I've worked on, have originated as somebody else's idea, you know? Even if it was accidental, like let's say you and I were talking and you just said something crazy and you just moved past it. I find these muses, right? Like I can't come up with something without a muse. And I might take something that you didn't even realize you were talking about, like Buffalo Bridge, the newsletter that myself and a couple other people work on. That wasn't ever my idea. Somebody was like, we got to do this. We need you to be involved in it. And I said, sure. And then, you know, within 2 weeks, I'm pouring myself out open and vulnerable in the intro every single week, right? But for me, I mean, I've never had a problem doing it, because so a lot of times, Nathan, like I sit down with somebody like you. I sit down with somebody that knows a problem, knows an industry, knows the people in an ecosystem, and they say, how do I get this to work? It's like I stumble upon somebody that knows the jungle and is in the jungle and is having a problem specific to the jungle. And I'm like, oh, well, let me just think where I saw a problem like this from the desert or from the tundra or from the ocean, right? Like, so for me, it's been easy. I think I've been the person that has usually come up with like oh, well, why don't we try it this way? And what I realize is like, the truth is, if you and I sat down and did a company, it's not that you'd have the idea and I would do the work. You would have the idea, and then I would be another paddle to volley the idea between. And like, it's like a tennis match. Two people are playing tennis. How many people are in the arena, the stands? A ton. People are attracted to action. People are naturally attracted. You got to be loud about playing. If you were playing tennis in a steel bubble, nobody would see anything. So you play outside and you grunt and you yell and you celebrate when you have victories and failures. And people go, I want to be around that. I want to be able to learn from that. So like for me, I always ask people, I'm like, all right, like I think that you got to get really good with framing. Okay, between you and me, we figure out what's going on and maybe the way to solve the problem. And then you got to say to people, my whole career I've been taking, you know, individuals that weren't always really highly respected for something silly, like they didn't go to college or they were, you know,
that's
right.
me.
Right. Or
well, I went 1 year before I got thrown out.
Right, but it could be anything. It could be that. It could be from where they're from. It could be the way they talk. It could be if they were a woman. It could be if they were whatever. I mean, you can use all the things. But honestly, I would just say, hey, look, like we got this problem, and I would do these kind of open casting calls. So like I wouldn't put ads out. I would be like, hey, who knows somebody? Who knows somebody who I don't say who knows somebody that can fill a VP of operations role. I said, who knows somebody that doesn't let anything slip between the cracks? Who knows somebody that can follow a recipe to a T? Who knows somebody that can read other people's emotions but can keep theirs in check? And people go, oh, Mary Lou. And I talked to Mary Lou. Mary Lou could be a toll booth attendant. And next thing you know, Mary Lou's got all the given skill sets you need and the right type of grit to do this particular thing. So like, and when you go to somebody and say, you've been hanging out on the ground floor forever, you want someone to respect you a little bit. I mean, I try to respect them a lot, but even a little bit, you all of a sudden give people opportunity. Maybe it's economic, maybe it's empowerment, maybe it's whatever. And when you give somebody an opportunity and they're a good person, you got to be able to smell a good person. They are the ones that make all the magic. You know, it's that's how I do it. You know,
I think it's probably the biggest trait of a true entrepreneur is their ability to read people. That's why most entrepreneurs are phenomenal salespeople, because they can read and match a situation. And it's not anything that's done intentionally. It's done instinctually. And it's genuine because people feel genuine. You're not going to get shit out of anybody until they trust you. And if people can't, and this is something that we do invisibly and we do it emotionally, and a lot of people aren't even aware that they do it at all. But we have a whole nother sort of sixth sense way of feeling people when we get close to them, whether or not that they're trustworthy based on, whatever bucket we want to put them in. And I think you can't have any serious relationship with anybody, any deep, meaningful relationship with anybody, unless you can convey that trust first. It has to be your responsibility to convey that trust first. And of course, with that trust, or if you're going to be a person that's trying to generate that trust, then you have to be the scariest thing in the world. You have to be vulnerable, because you can't be, I mean, there's nothing that generates trust more than vulnerability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's a little side note, but I do find that characteristic is pretty common amongst great business people, whether they want to call themselves entrepreneurs or not. People do business with people, period. Yeah. I don't care how digital it is. It's still that way, Yeah.
No, totally agree. I mean, shaking hands in person has transformed to shaking hands over copper wire, which is now shaking hands over digital bits. I agree. It's at least the way it's done today. I think with every generation they look at what's happening and they're like, oh, all these good things I appreciated and enjoyed are going to go away. I mean, I know when I talk to my dad, who's an entrepreneur too, and he's an antique trader, same thing. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be your age right now because I wouldn't know what to do. And I could just see in like my son who's 5, I'm like, I don't want to do it the way you're going to have to do it, and I don't think things are getting perpetually shittier. I just think they're changing. I mean, they're changing at a very fast pace right now, but they are changing.
Yeah, the methodology, I mean, it's still basic human needs that are being met. They're just being met in a different way.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
So I've got some questions for some of the things that, that I'm just curious about that you have experience in. Sure. And one of the things that I'm really curious, I think we talked a little bit about it, is, and I'm only going to ask you this, I'm super curious about it because it relates to me and my business. That's the way questions work here.
It's fine.
My business started with $500 and it's built up now. I'm past that, what they call the adolescent stage. We're a mature business. We've been around for 19 years. We're at a certain level. We had a nice 10, 20% growth every year. Profitable, super nice business. But I can't help but thinking how to scale it even more. I mean, we've gotten this way because I systemize and scale. And there's a point where you start playing an incredibly different game. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people that I know who might listen to this have small businesses, friends of mine that have small businesses, and whether they aspire to grow it into a big business or just want to continue to be self-employed, it's a world that most of us don't get to, where we go, okay, you start a business, you work your ass off, you put a shit pile of elbow grease and sweat equity into this, and the match catches. And you hire good people and the thing starts to go and you have a nice little business. At what point does growing that business, I guess at what point do you see, holy shit, this could be more than this little, this could compound exponentially, and then how do you find the resources? In other words, I'll ask you specifically for our business because it's the only way to say it. So we start with $500. Now we're selling thousands of motorcycles a year. We're in an industry that's not attractive to private equity investors, not generally, not certainly a single store, that kind of thing. If I want to play a game where I want to scale this shop and put 10 of them across the country and connect them all together, and I've got a pretty good idea of how that looks and but I have no idea about how to find the logistics to put together, or basically I don't even know what I don't know because I've never played that game. Did you go through that with ACV, or from the start was the intention to build this monster up and scale it like crazy?
Yeah, so if you ask the other two guys, if you ask Dan and Joe, I don't know what kind of answer they'll give you. They're also both still with the company. I left it under my own power in late 2018. But, this is what I knew. And I actually took this from my grandfather who used to keep a garden out back. If he was alive right now, he'd be like, this is what you remember from me, that I had a garden, but I'd be like, yeah. And so when design to scale is a trendy word. It's always been a trendy word. I mean, I'm from Rochester, right? Like Kodak was, for those on your show that are 40 or older, they know totally what I'm talking about. Was a thing that everything they did was designed to scale, developed to scale, manufactured to scale, like all of that. And so I don't think we did that. I think what we did is we said, if we can build a great business in Buffalo, okay, it's like, I used to equate it to, planting a tomato plant. Now, my Italian roots show through that I called it tomato plant, but when you plant a tomato plant, you forget the ones you get from the store, right? You put seeds in the ground and you water it and you wait, and it takes a little while to see signs of life. And that's kind of the way it is. Like for ACV, it was very territory by territory based. You water the thing. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm talking to a bunch of people. We say we're going to start this digital auction. ACV is a dealer-to-dealer digital auction, for automotive. And then all of a sudden you see some sprouts, right? It starts to sprout up. You start to see people talking to other people about it. You see this pre-launch activity starting to, I don't think, for us, it wasn't like light a match, burn baby burn. It was more like I saw it sprout. And then the whole point is, can I nurture this thing to give a constant yield? And what does a constant yield look like? So when you think about it, when you break it down to something like that, we turn Buffalo into something, I don't even know what they're doing now. They brag about every now and then on LinkedIn if they sold 1,500 cars or 1,800 cars or whatever in Buffalo. It's a lot of cars in one little territory. Buffalo's got 1 million people. It's the 50th in the DMA, city size by population, stuff like that. So I was like, okay, if we do this here, why can't we do it in Rochester? Why can't we do it in Albany? Why can't we do it in Syracuse? Why can't we do it in Scranton-Wilkes-Barre, right? And if I said to you, if you can grow one tomato plant, can you grow 60? You're like, well, yeah. Once you learn how to grow one of them, if you don't, you know how much effort and time. ACV is a really linear business, though.
But you have to focus specifically on that growth. I relate heavily to what you just said as far as what I would consider the methodology to grow the software company. The problem is coming down to, here's a prime example. And this is real world. It's almost embarrassing to admit, but this is real world. In January or February of this year, I said to the gentleman that runs my company, based on what I was looking at, I was feeling a lot of urgency. We need to get a rep on the road. We need to work on this prototyping of how many visits can a rep get to? How can we, where can we put the numbers behind? Okay, one rep produces this much and all we need is 10 reps, 20 reps, 100 reps. And we had a hard deadline of getting a rep on the road by February. We just put our first rep on the road last week. And this is the real world. And I look back and I go, why has this taken so fucking long? I mean, it drives me insane. But sometimes the time frame isn't yours. But I get that phase where you finally go, okay, is there ever a timeline? I mean, at what point is this going to happen? And I think the key is, am I focusing on day-to-day operations, or am I putting my emphasis and investment into growing it in that manner? But I'm like you, I won't hire 10 reps. I need to hire one rep in an area, scale it, feel like they were a good representative of what we could expect outside, and then make my plan.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes the real world hops in and things get in your way, like this little pandemic thing, you know, is a little intrusive, you know, cause some delays, you know. How do you hold and keep that vision and continue to push forward for year after year without losing the feeling that you might be barking up the wrong tree? How do you know when to stop, man?
Well, so knowing when to stop is an entirely different thing, right? I mean, you stop when your heart stops beating to some degree, right? I mean, so it's interesting, right? Like probably, and I didn't know you in February, right? So I would have guessed in February you got a good profitable business. You're not like you go back home. Like let's say going to somewhere else is like going on a journey. But when you go on a journey and you leave nothing, you got nothing to go back to.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have a home with food on the table, right, man? Like you get a little hungry, you turn around and go home. You know, like, and that's the thing. So it's easy when you got nothing to go back to.
Shit,
because you just got to keep going forward.
When I started the business, we had nothing. We had 2 months worth of bills in the bank. We had 2 kids. My wife didn't work; she took care of the kids, and I was the sole breadwinner. And when I lost my job prior to starting the business, we had no income. I have never worked harder in my life. There is, you know, nowadays I think I'm soft. I don't know. I feel soft compared to the reason why that company worked is because it had no choice. It had to work. Yep. I had no choice, and every day was a new crisis I had to manage. But I look back at those days incredibly fondly because I felt like I did something. I felt like I really worked. And now we're playing I play a different game than you, but either way, it's a very different game than when you started with different responsibilities. My responsibility now is to my 60 employees and those types of things, and those decisions start to change. But I miss those days and I miss that energy of rolling up my sleeves and working 70 hours because I kind of decided I'm not going to work that hard. I wanted to start my business so I didn't have to work that many hours. It's hard to keep those things in balance.
Well, and now you got to make the decision, you know, the baby that is this software business, this technology business, are you going to feed it or are you not going to feed it? Because honestly, what it wants to eat is your time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what and it's, look, I mean, when I left ACV, I left, and not too long afterwards, I got an opportunity to sell some shares, and I did. And I got another opportunity to sell a couple shares, and I did. You know, I did it twice. And I mean, you know this about me. I either donated or invested all of it because I said, I'm 37. I don't want – I mean, one of the reasons I left was you respect and you care. I wasn't the CEO of the company, and I wasn't the only founder of the company. And I thought the company was in a good place. So I didn't feel like I was abandoning those employees, you know, who I really do think of as my family. I mean, I text a lot of them, not the high ranking ones, but I text a lot of them pretty often, you know, because they're the ones I care about. Right. Yeah. You know, what I realized was I don't want to not be hungry. Right. Like I almost don't want to have alternatives. Right. Now, don't get me wrong. I paid off my house. I drive a 2005 Grand Cherokee and I got a 2006 Silverado, right? I mean, if I had a loan on those, I wouldn't be much of a finance guy, you know, but I own everything I got. And what I got is enough to hit that base level of Maslow's hierarchy. And so you ask me like how I've gotten to this point of where I help and do so much with so many people. It's because I still feel hungry, right? I mean, I do like, you know, I think that if something I have this belief that if there's a natural fit and you create value and you have relevancy, that somehow the universe is going to take care of you.
Right? I have that same faith.
Yeah. And if I didn't have that type of feeling, I would never have met you and you would have never met me, to be honest. Right. I mean, you were proactively poking around saying, how could I help my business? I mean, because you haven't starved it, but you're not giving it both teats at the same time either. Like you were when you were,
I am now. I'm working on it.
Yeah, right. No.
You're right.
But the thing is, it's easy to say, what is it? I mean, for me, I wish I had more hobbies. I mean, honestly, almost 100% of my hobbies have to do with the time I'm with my son, and I'm a single dad. And being a single dad is both a blessing and a curse, right? Sure. I felt like it was a curse right off the bat. Have my son, 50, 60% of the time. But the blessing of it, which is taking me a time to realize, is like, it allows me to be 100% that hungry person when I'm not doing that, right? And having my son, who's my everything, is like, it's my grounding and it's my purpose. Like, that is my purpose, and I'm governed, right? You have governors on motorcycles, right? I'm governed to be able to and throttle back on what I can do with him, So everything else I do is almost like make him proud and my family proud and myself proud, that I'm still hungry. I'm still operating. I'm still creating. I mean, there's you could sell your business and do nothing, right? You could ride bikes and motorcycles. You could, but you choose not to. So there is still a burn inside you, and I think that is what makes a good use of life, is to constantly be doing something. Like, even in the things I've heard that you do in your spare time, you work really hard at that. You are not,
I don't feel like I work hard enough at it. It's just the way it goes,
Yeah. No, it's true, man. It's true.
Yeah. We're always our own worst critic.
That's true.
Always.
Yeah, that's very true.
So how did you go from being the son of a furniture and antiques dealer to understanding so much about angel investing, venture cap investing, private equity investing, getting involved with entrepreneurs? How let's back up a little bit. Is this something that you studied for? Is this something that you have a degree in? Like, what's your education, or how did you get here, man?
So my dad was an antique dealer before I was born. And actually, when I was born October of '83, and in December,
Jesus, you making me feel old.
In December, 2 months later, his entire antique store burnt down, and he had almost no insurance on it. And my mom told me, she said, if it wasn't for you being alive, like, I don't know if your father would have made it through that.
Ooh, that's heavy.
Yeah, it is. Well, and again, I don't think she was. I think there's truth in every monster, right? But she said no. She said, your father couldn't look at antique for a while, and that's when my father got into doing, at that point, reproduction in antiques, roll top desks, basically. And then he went back into antiques, but was also doing new furniture. So I was around it all the time. My saying is, while other kids were playing catch with their dad out back, my father was picking me up to bid on, a Serape rug at an auction, in downtown Rochester.
But did you like it? You loved it?
Well, it's all I knew, right? So yeah, I liked it. Do you like spending time with your father? Yeah. Right. It's one of those things, like, and one thing I've taken from him is being able to, like, whatever you do, whatever you love, share with the people you love, right? It doesn't matter what it is, right? So, I was around that, and I was like, and my father never had a boss, and I just, anytime I've ever had a boss, I've gotten fired, sometimes multiple times. I co-founded ACV. I got fired from there. Then they brought me back, and then I got to leave my own terms, but still, I got fired from everything. And so I knew, I was like, okay, I got a father who works really hard, and my mother's a saint, I got most of my grounding, a lot of my faith, a lot of my trust that things will work out, right? I get that from her. But honestly, I grew up, I saw my dad wheeling and dealing. I remember us going down to New York, and I saw that they were selling fake Oakleys on the street. I bought a bunch of them. I came back, I took my dad's suitcase, and in like 8th grade, I was going into lunch, opening a suitcase, like a briefcase, selling like fake Oakleys and like watches out of it. And I did it through high school. And, I mean,
the guy that's pulling open his shirt.
Yeah. It's like, open his mink coat and showing his watches. But, no, I mean, I always did that. I mean, I remember folding pizza boxes for $0.10 a piece when I, was just old enough to ride a bike down the street to Shells. And, so I was always around it. And then when I was in college, my father ended up having to be, he was out of commission for a while. He was in and out of the hospital and stuff for like a year and a half. And I had a full ride at U of R. And so I had to keep my grades up. I originally was going to go, I thought I was going to be an architect. I wanted to design castles. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. Right. I mean, I'm blowing off math class. So I'm not going to pass that. And I was going to be a doctor. I was like, I'll be a surgeon. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, man, I don't want to be a surgeon. It takes a really long time. And plus, I couldn't make it to any labs because I was running my dad's store my freshman and sophomore year. And so, and then when I did that, that's what really, I mean, it was in my blood the whole time. That's what kind of awakened it. It activated my mutant gene. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like I want to be in business, because it was an ability to make more impact and more things done than I ever could with my own two hands. Right. So I was around that. I ended up going to grad school, and I learned what venture capital was. At that time, my dad had came back on board. My father's like a phoenix. He just keeps coming back. And then I was like, okay, I learned what venture capital was, and I was like, this sounds cool. And, I showed up at this venture capital group in Rochester. I was like, I want to work here. And they're like, we don't have any openings. I'm like, you got a desk? They're like, yeah. And so I showed up every single day.
That's awesome.
And they gave me stuff. And, for like 6 months, I think that they were paying me like $200 a week, just so they weren't like breaking any like labor laws. and then I got into that. And then, I realized I was never going to make any money there. And I didn't know how long it was going to exist. I was pretty vestigial to some degree, even though I was hustling. And so I started doing my own thing. And I started working for startups. If they could pay me cash, they paid me cash. If they couldn't, they gave me equity. I was working with like between.
What was your expertise? Like when you pitched somebody that you would be a help to them or join them. I mean, you didn't have all of the background yet at that point.
No.
What was your pitch as to how you could help?
I asked them. I would say like, what do you need? And they'd say, oh, I need to raise money. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll figure out how to raise money. But then like I learned how to do like, and I ended up getting my finance, a degree in finance from Simon, but like, they don't teach you how to get non-dilutive funding and getting your MBA. They don't teach you that. So I was like, I got to figure this out. And, people were like, oh, you have an MBA. We'd love to have you. And nothing I was doing was equating to what my MBA was. Like, I mean, I graduated from Simon with decent grades. And I was like, I still had to teach myself completely over how to build a financial model. And then I learned, I built them and I was literally building another model today, So I just learned these things, and I told people, I'm like, well, what problems do you have? Let me see if I can fix them. If I can, pay me for them, And then I have a little bit of a natural business development side, and startups are like, we don't have anybody. Will you do business development for us? I was like, sure. So now I'm doing business development for like companies that have like coatings for implantable medical devices, or companies that, make metallic inks for printed electronics, or sneaker company, like whatever. It could be whatever. And you just keep taking shots on goal, and you just keep taking them and taking them, man.
I got a question for you then. From the other side of the fence, from a business owner that wants to attract some help or is looking to finally go to the next level, tell me honestly, how much of who you decide to work with has to do with the business model, and how much it has to do with that person and the team they have around them or their track record?
Yeah, so I will not work with an asshole. I frankly don't care a lot about the business model or even the industry. I mean, this is what makes me like the anti-VC, because these are like, I want to get into like big, but like, that's the thing. I mean, so, what you're doing with motorcycles, you could be doing with something completely esoteric of which there's no market, and there's no chance to be anything more than, let's say, even a lifestyle business, so, but that's the cool thing. I have this gift where I can look at things and think of all the analogs of it, like in a million different ways, right? So it doesn't matter what the business model is, because like, motorcycles real good. That means that I'm like, hey, you know what? I just went to go buy a motorcycle, and I heard the guys complaining about how hard it is to get warranties done on them because the paperwork's a pain in the ass. If you know this industry, you think you can optimize that, and you'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, okay, well, all those connections and all those people and the person you are works on that too. Why don't we go do that, right? Like, that's just like an idea, right? Or whatever it is. So like, it all comes down to the people. I mean, when I was younger, I had to work with people I didn't love and I didn't like. When we started ACV, we took money from people I didn't like. We had to. I was hungry, and they were the only ones that had the food, right?
And you guys, as a sidebar, you raised $300 million for that company, correct?
Yeah, well,
in multiple rounds, but
yeah. So they just raised another 55 like last week. Wow. So I mean, like it's continuing on, And what's funny is, what the hardest money to raise was? The first million. Yeah. The first $1 million, dude. I mean, it was. I was just telling somebody today. There's almost $2 million worth of checks out there from people that told me they were going to come in on our first $1 million round that never did. That I like to remind, they'd be sitting at like a 92x right now, right?
Yeah,
like,
what it would have been worth.
Yeah, hey, that $100,000 that would have been worth $10 million, right? Like, what did you do with it, right?
Yeah.
But that's what's hard. I mean, when you get to the point of gaining attention from all the places that have a lot of money, dude, it's not hard. It's not hard at that point, It's hard in the beginning. It really is, and that's what's tough,
Yeah. I also know, as a business owner, you get afraid of giving up equity, or giving up even more than equity, control. Giving up control. I've had to go through this lesson of, this baby of mine, this little baby that I've grown and the people around have taken care of and fed and grown, that it serves for me more of an emotional need than it serves a financial need. And that is hard to get out of when you're looking at scaling it, because you have to make compromises in your idea of utopia. And I wonder how much, and I'd be curious from your point of view with working with people like me, how much does that just get in the way? Because I think it has gotten in the way of growth opportunities for me, but some of those I've been okay with passing because they just were so counter to what I feel my business should be. How do you deal with that? Or how much does that get in the way of people really finding the ability to grow their business into something?
So growth is a strange thing, right? Grow too fast with the wrong fundamentals, and you make bows that break very easy, right? Grow too slow with the wrong objectives, and you get a squatty little tree that never bears any fruit, right? It's a balance.
Yeah.
Right. And it's easy to want. I mean, the question you got to ask yourself is, why do you want to grow? Do you want to do it because you have a solution that you want the world to enjoy? I mean, a lot of times when I sit down with in the beginning of my career, it was a lot. I was with a lot of engineers, machinists, PhDs. That's a lot of who the founders were. And I remember on countless occasions them saying, I just want to see this be the blank. I want to see this be the platform that's used so that less people die from heart attacks from new drugs. I want this to be the therapeutic that inhibits the advancement of HIV. I want this to be, something that stops, getting, infrapopliteal, thrombotic effects, right? And you're like, and they didn't care, right? And so, for them, the truth is all those things, some of them did well, some of them didn't. But, you get in these positions where you're just okay, the goal is not to grow this thing as big as possible. I mean, I didn't want to grow ACV the size it was because it's not fun. I mean, life should be fun. And it's people could be what do you mean making money is not fun? It's not fun. The act of making money is not enjoyable. The sensation of your revenue going up is not a sensual sensation, right?
It is
it's
for some people, unfortunately.
no, but honestly, if they look in the mirror, it doesn't put any more hair on their head. It doesn't suck in their gut. It doesn't make them more attractive to their wife. It doesn't make them a better friend. Like, what does it really do? So it makes you richer if you're actually making money. And I mean, part of the other problem with venture capital is, like I don't even know at this point if ACV has done as much in revenue as they have raised, which literally meant they could have taken the money,
just put it in the bank, close the
thrown
business,
it against the wall, and caught it, and been in the same fucking spot, right? Now, I joke. I mean, it's built into a great company that's really disruptive, but seriously, like,
and they're investing in potential.
Yeah, potential is a 4-letter word, man. Like, I don't want it to say on my epitaph, this dude had a lot of potential, right? Right? Like, no thanks, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to say this kid punched above his weight. He played with a big motor, right? Like, like that's what I wanted to say, because the truth is, I think at the end of the day, and it's not any of our jobs to judge each other, but we do get judged, and we get judged on what we did with what we had. What did you do with what you got is what it comes down to. So I've become a lot more philosophical, a lot more emotional, a lot more, caring about the bigger impact and the legacy of things. And it's easy to do when you're in a company and like you got your mortgage paid off, and like, like I got a back, like I'm not going to eat all these oranges, right? Like they sell it in a bag. I can't even possibly eat them all as a single guy, right? Like I'm turn-oriented, right? I mean, like that, like, so when you're in that position, it's easy to say it, my girlfriend says this to me, and I love that she says it, and I love that she lives it, and I try and live it too. She goes, a good life is staying close to death and poverty.
Oh,
right?
Man,
like,
I so am with you there.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book right now called The Untethered Soul. I just finished it. Have you read it?
No.
It's a really cool book. But there is an entire chapter on holding death close in mind. And as, I don't know if you ever heard of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but It's the principle of holding death very close in your mind really leads to an extraordinary life. If you really are aware of the fact that you don't have any say, and it could be any minute now. It's the old sort of, it's another way of wrapping your head around that. If you had a week left to live, what would you be doing? It wouldn't be scrolling through Facebook. You know what I mean? And so it's holding death very close to mind really makes you want to live your best life. It makes you appreciate every second you have when you really can feel that it could be around the corner. It could be tonight on the drive to the restaurant. It could be any time. And every day you wake up, you think, this could be my last day. And what I do with my time is my choice. Luckily, both of us are in that position where we can make that choice. And I often find myself really kind of racked with guilt that I don't feel like I'm taking that responsibility seriously enough.
Isn't it crazy? You think about it, and you and I will go to bed tonight, and both of us will be like, fuck, I fucking wasted part of today.
Yep.
Because we do. I mean, look, we're human.
Yep.
We screw up more things than we ever get right. I mean, sometimes I think life is just a big benchtop experiment that you pray to God at the end of it, you come up with a couple good results, right?
Barry at work where I am says, sometimes the best thing you can do is just grab a big handful of spaghetti and huck it at the wall and just pay attention to what sticks,
Right. That's true, man. That's true. I absolutely agree with that. I do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I admire your passion for helping people. I think that's so cool, and I think it's a neat goal to get beyond. Like, I'd like to have enough money, not to drive a BMW, but so that I can share my experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have. And some of it's flat out luck, being in the right place at the right time, being born to the right parents, being in the right city, whatever is, taking that almost as a responsibility. You feel that weight, but you can feel that weight and do nothing about it, and you're doing a lot about it. I mean, you have a phenomenal amount of connections. The fact that you said, "Sure, I'll take 2 hours of my time out to do the podcast with me," not giving a shit about what the audience is or anything, but just an opportunity for us to just dig a little bit into, let's talk about business, because it turns both of us on immensely. And this is I think there's a lot that people can learn from that attitude, even while they're not in that position. That I do think the universe works a certain way without sounding too gooey or too hokey. And what you give out is what you get back. So focusing on what you give out is extremely important.
One thing I will say is, and it's not like people are going to listen to this and all of a sudden go mentor or advisor, start a whole bunch of companies. You don't need to. But I will tell you one thing that has been an unnecessary strain in my life is that people don't only don't understand it, they don't like it. They don't like it. I mean, when I went back to ACV, I was helping pro bono a handful of companies on the side. I had the CEO come up to me and he goes, "I need you to only care about this." And I thought, I got a kid at home, dude. You think this is even in my top two? It's not. At the time I had a kid and I had, a woman at home, and I was like, those are my two priorities. And I'm a man of faith. That's one of my top priorities. I got to make sure I make my mortgage. That's one of my priorities. Like, those are my priorities, and then I was like, and what do you mean I can't help people? Like, and I was just like, damn, like, this ain't cool. I feel like I'm under somebody's thumb. I could feel like I shook my hands and I didn't see anything on there, but I felt the chains. And I was like, man, I don't like those chains. But I hope people just understand that, like, sometimes people are doing things for different reasons, right? It's not always that, like, just like you said earlier about people being rich, and when people are rich, that other people look at them and think that they're assholes and they're money grabbers or whatever they are. Like, some are and some aren't, right? I mean, we know the statistics on assholism, right? But when it comes to this, like, maybe the kid that is doing 3 or 4 different things is doing it because he knows he's got somebody he's doing it for, right? Maybe he's doing it because he knows that he's been fired from every job he's ever had, and that, he can't go to bed at night knowing there are people he cares about that he could help. And so who cares if he wants to sleep a couple less hours and spend a little bit more time helping another founder or being a father or being a partner or whatever. And, like, if people would just, if anybody took anything from me, I hope they just learned that, like, people are strange when you're a stranger, right? Like, I mean, what's his name had it right. And, like, so don't think of people as strangers. Think of them as, like, if you operate with the understanding that mankind is good and mankind is doing not just what is in its own self-interest, but the self-interest of those around it, because we all love somebody. We're all somebody's kid. A lot of us are somebody's parent or sibling or friend or whatever. Like, if we just operate with that and just back off a little bit and stop trying to jump into everybody else's, tell everybody else how to mow their lawn, we will enjoy the lawn we sit in so much more. Like, that's the thing I hope people get, because I'm just doing what makes me happy and what I feel like is right. It's not the same thing you or anybody else feels, but, like, if we're just all allowed to be ourselves, the world is a way better place, man.
Yeah. It's if you get into, you mentioned your faith. It's an interesting concept to think that consciousness might be universal, and that what each one of us is a point of consciousness. And we don't understand that the consciousness, or I should say, the person who is listening to the voice in your head, the one that listens, the awareness is universal. And but our individualism is who we think this body is based on our past experiences, the world we look at, what we try to protect ourselves from. But if we can back out of those differences and realize that deep at heart, we're all just trying to figure out how to be happy and how we're trying to be connected and all those things, it takes a little bit of that judgment out of the people around you and allows you to realize in a very traditionally religious teaching way that helping others is helping yourself. Like it's literally one and the same.
Dude, it's so right. You know, I mean, this is the way I think of it, right? I mean, you got a fingers and you got a hand. And the fingers are independent, but they all go to one hand, right? So what if we're all souls and the souls are like the fingers and we're all on the same fucking hand, right? I mean, like,
Well, this is
like,
what Kabbalah teaches is
yeah,
basically, yeah, it's basically if you look at the trunk of a tree, you see a single entity. You look up at the branches or the leaves and you realize that that's an individual leaf, but it's coming off the same tree. It's the same kind of concept as fingers and hands. Very similar type thing.
there is a guy. So this summer we got to get together up in the Adirondacks. I have a place up in the Adirondacks, an inlet. You can get there pretty easily from your bike on a beautiful trail, and I'm sure you'll find your way to get it. But just a little north of that's a place called Racket Lake. And in Racket Lake, for like 60 days out of the year, there's a place, a supermarket, and in the back of it there's a butcher shop. And there's a guy named Ed that runs the butcher shop. Ed is actually a jazz trumpeter.
Cool.
And he plays beautiful trumpet, all sorts of different trumpet. And the guy's got COPD. And
Holy
the guy lives on like a shack right next to the water, but he's a great dude. I'll tell you what, that all goes away when he's playing that trumpet. I will not forget on his two little meat cases with the steaks inside of it, he's got an index card. And it says on there, you do not have a soul. You are a soul and you have a body, right? Like, and when you start, so it's funny, if you just read the top half of that, you'd be like, what the hell is this? You read the bottom half of that and you go, oh, this guy's a lot more than a butcher, right? Or I don't want to find out what else his dude is. But I mean, like you think of that and you're just like, so how does that all come back to like the kind of stuff we're talking about? Like if all we are doing, if all business is a cooperative effort to invent, create, and deploy something that originally sprung out of somebody's imagination and hard work, why wouldn't we all be part of a business? Like who doesn't, like, you know, put this, like play this in like some call center and say, raise your hand if you have an idea and you wish you did something about it. Every hand would go up if they weren't going to get fired for their arms going up, you know? And so it's one of these things where it's like, I have found business to be the art form of which the media of which I like to operate in, because it is one of collaboration, right? Yeah. I mean, it is one of creativity and ingenuity and like failure. Like we all know most businesses fail. Right, your software
it's 80% in the first 2 years. 80%.
And look, outside of having enough capital, like keep capital into a dead business is like a vegetable on life support, right? Yeah. I mean, alive is not the goal. You know, a good friend of mine is a vet, and I've only had one dog in my life. His name was Gilbert. He showed up on my front porch, Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, like 2011. He was a great little dog. And when he was ready to go down, I couldn't do it. And my buddy was a vet, and he goes, Jack, when a dog doesn't get to be a dog anymore, why are you doing this to him? And I go, dude, that's the way life is. When none of us are the people that we want to be anymore, why do we do this to ourselves, you know? And so how do we stop from doing that? The cool thing about a business, you can start it when you're 10. You can start it when you're 100. You can cooperate and be part of it at any given time. So... You know, I don't think of it as like a bad word or like something where profit is the motive. Like if you're running a business to make money, that's entirely different than like doing what you love and shrouding it in a business so you can get away having fun for your entire life and hopefully make some money doing it. I mean, those are two different things.
That sounds like why when I started my business, one of the huge goals was I didn't want to work as much as I was working. It's funny how you think it's like now you work. I work 24/7. Maybe I'm not actually turning the wrenches on the bikes, but my mind never stops thinking it's an all-consuming fire that is 24/7. It's a different type of work.
But it's your opus, man. I mean, like
but it's so funny. I don't want it to be. It's like
but stop thinking of it like a business, right? I mean, name one thing, so not a person. Name one thing, some entity or organization or project you've got more of your DNA, your blood, and your brain power in that. Like, there's probably not another thing. outside of your kids and your wife, take all that out of it, you know, because we all could always do more of that. And, you know, when we start thinking about it, that's the first thing we think. We don't ever think, oh, I spent too much time with my wife. If you did, you got a whole nother problem. Right? So, man, why am I spending so much time with my wife? Well, okay, we got an issue there. But no, man, I mean, you think about it and it's like, you know, it is part of your opus, because I think of what I do when I help founders is being my opus, because it's helping people. You know, like I could go help somebody dig a hole. Trust me, I do. I open invitation. Anybody's ever planted a tree? I love planting trees. I say I love digging holes. And I got my son addicted to doing it now. And if you look at my backyard, it looks like I had like a rabid groundhog back there. It's just, you know, it's like Swiss cheese. No, I mean, I tell people, I go, I think it's my opus, because like what I am doing is like, I am trying to give, I have not been called to repay 1/10 the debt that I carry, that I've taken from this world. Right. So like, it's my only way that I get a chance to getting back to zero. You know, that's my only way. And so that's my life's work, you know, at least to this point, it's what it's been. So.
Yeah, who knows what's next? You keep talking about yourself like you're an old man. I mean,
no, I know.
37's pretty young, you know?
Yeah, it was a lot of life, 37 years, man, you know. But no, yeah. I agree. But, you know, but then again, I mean, it's like what we talked about earlier. If in my mind, I am constantly thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead. But I also got to operate like, when I get in my car to go play lacrosse tonight, I might get sideswiped and be gone. So like, you know.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's a terrible thought, but it is something you have to acknowledge, that we are all going there eventually. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So speaking of that, I've used up a good portion of your time. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Otherwise, you still good?
Yeah.
Cool. I don't have a ton more questions. I love talking about business and life in this manner. And one of the reasons I want to do this podcast is I don't really want to hear the details of what ACV Auction does. I'm not looking to promote a commercial for my guests. I'm more interested in like your mindset of how you got what you got done. You know, what parts were difficult, and we rolled your sleeves up. And I love that you touch on that what you and I are doing, the intentions behind it, it all comes down to working with people. We're just a community. It doesn't, I mean, we're all just a community at whatever our roles are within that community. And it's encouraging for me to talk to someone like you, because it makes me feel like maybe I can play a bigger game. And again, the bigger game isn't about getting a Ferrari. The bigger game is about contributing. Like, I've been fortunate enough to have some great experiences, and I have some experience that might help somebody going through something that I went through 10 years ago that I struggled with, and maybe I could help them struggle less or not struggle at all. And that's when you feel like you're living a fruitful life, I think, you know?
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, you know, the greatest accomplishment of you taking a shot on this, the success you will find in it, is going to be, you know, multifold, right? I mean, like, you could have success on a P&L and a balance sheet. You could have success in, you know, the dandelion effect of 2 or 3 of the people you do it with going on to do their own things later on. The success could be just like, you know, giving people a different view of the way you do things. So I think it's great that you do this, man. I mean, you know, I know you've started to do these a little bit more business focused, and that's okay. I mean, but it's like the business of business, right? I mean, it's what the human being is behind it, right? Because to this point, I don't think a machine or robot runs a single business, you know, or is the entirety of a business.
Yeah. Ugh, that's a whole nother topic. AI and all that stuff about. I hope we don't get to the point where we can't. Well, I know we're going to get to the point, but I'm not looking forward to the day where we can't tell the difference between AI on the phone. I mean, we're pretty close to it there on the phone, but in other areas, the deep fakes and false videos and things, I think it's going to get harder to be a human and know, you know, how to trust what we're watching and what we're seeing.
Just imagine we would have to spend more time in person together. I mean, that's
You know,
the only
it's
way.
it's funny. Last night, we're all waiting for the election results, and the world is really, well, not the world, the United States in particular is has decided to become very binary, and there's a lot of fear, and everybody's wound up, and we're in a constant state of an overload of cortisol and stress hormones, and so much of everybody's in this fight or flight situation right now. And last night I went out for a walk at 8:30 at night, pitch black, 30 degrees, just feeling the cold air on my face, and you know, I had this thought that is what we're losing right now. That's what we're missing. Like if everybody tonight or last night, I was thinking, if everybody was out walking and more focused, and I was a little bit cold. I didn't dress warm enough, so I was a little cold. So what I had to focus on as a human was, I got to run a little bit, or I got to put my hands in my pocket, and I got to feel this cold air, and I'm alive, man. That's experiencing, like, that's being alive. And I couldn't help but thinking then, if everybody in the world was out for a walk right now and not looking at Twitter, how we treat each other face to face when we see each other is completely different. And I hope to hell we don't lose that. Because then we're losing our humanism. We're losing our ability. I mean, everything that you do and the opportunity to take risks on people like me to get to know me and spend your time, that all goes out the window if we're going to, get consumed and stuck in this world of glass that we have. And it worries the hell out of me. And I also think at the same time, we're talking about businesses that are run by robots. At the same time, with all of this distraction, it creates a phenomenal opportunity for somebody that wants to focus on reducing friction and creating value for people, because they're at such a high level of stress. Anything that you can do to create value for somebody to either take down that stress or make their life more easy or help them create some extra wealth so they can sort of get on the other side of that, it feels like a very worthwhile investment of your time. It's so easy for me to say because I haven't done it nearly to the level you have, but I'm assuming from everything we've talked about and the connections you have that you're getting great fulfillment out of giving your time in this manner.
Yeah, I am. I mean, full disclosure, I operate with this deep-seated feeling that, like, I owe it to the earth, right? I mean, like, I'm like, oh, that's great. You think I'm altruistic and wonderful, but, like, I can't not do this. Right. So give me the accolades, give me the attaboys and the pats on the back, but, like, realize that I don't think I can't because it's just the way that I feel. Right. I feel like I've been given some amazing opportunity. Again, like, when I got to face my maker, I'm not going to stand there and say, oh, you gave me all this and I just squandered it. Right. Like, I look at the people that have less, and this sounds horrible, the people who have gone through their hands, and I go, you will not be judged as severely. Like, you didn't have as much to sit on, right? Like, if you never have enough, you're never brought to that point of decisions. So I feel like it's what I got to do.
I feel the same responsibility. I talk to my wife about that a lot. And sometimes it's a crippling feeling where it prevents me from relaxing very much. Because anytime, maybe outside of my biking and my guilty pleasures, but bless you.
Thank you.
Have you had a COVID test?
No.
It's not funny at all. I'm sorry. But I know what you mean.
Can you please put a mask on while we're talking?
Yeah, hey, Jesus, put a mask on. You're supposed to sneeze in your sleeve.
Is sneezing one of the symptoms? I thought it was coughing. Is it sneezing too?
I don't know. I just know if you do have it, you sure as hell don't want to be sneezing on people. That's all.
It's such prejudice. Like, I got allergies, and I'm like, all of a sudden now I'm a plague rat, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like,
I mean, the temperatures only fluxed like 40 degrees in the last 24 hours here, and, like, the leaves are molding. I don't know what they're doing, but
yeah, it's terrible.
I get it, man.
No, I feel that same obligation, and I think it's a very strong pull. It really is. I mean, when I hired the gentleman that's running my company right now, I had hit a certain saturation point, was very frustrated, and I remember telling people I was semi-retired, and I bought a house 2 hours away from the business and moved to Vermont and pursued my biking and my passion. Said, okay, I'm okay financially. I can semi-retire. It was absolutely the most agonizing year and a half, 2 year I've ever had, because all I did was sit at home and say, okay, what do I create for who now? Where's the need? Who can I help? And I know that sounds awful, like, hey, I think I'll pat myself in the back. I'm a great person. But it's a legitimate motivation. It's a legitimate, and it comes from that responsibility, saying, I have been blessed. I have been lucky. I've been blessed. I don't care how you look at it. And it makes you feel obligated. I think most people who, we love other people and we like being in our community. I don't think it's a natural state to get a lot and not want to give a lot. I really do think it's more human nature that you do feel that responsibility. If you've been very blessed and you're halfway aware and you have any culture at all, to realize that where you and I are, and I'm not even talking financially, I'm talking where we're at with what we're trying to focus on with life, is an opportunity that 99.9% of every person on this earth doesn't have. And that creates a huge sense of responsibility that I can't squander my time. It's not fair.
Correct. To be fair, though, 99.9% of people don't take the shots required to get here. That's a part of it. So
there's risk
there are
involved.
A lot to do. I don't know where you cut that loaf and say, well, these people did. As a matter of fact, they worked harder, tried more, worked smarter, and they just didn't get lucky, right? Like, look, I mean, it's hard work and it's luck, right? I mean, it's those two things.
It's absolutely part of it.
Yeah, I overheard a couple people. I was on one of these Zoom calls, and they were talking afterwards. They were debating if luck really exists, and I was just like, yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, it's the invisible hand that decides what goes where. It's like, if you believe that there is some sense of purpose and some sense of something bigger out there, luck absolutely is one of the ways. It's one of those, Kabbalistic, does it really exist? And it's like, well, yeah, of course it does. I mean, I've gone through enough things in my life, and it's not just because everything's worked out for me, because absolutely everything has not worked out for me. I'm a single dad, that's not what I was aiming for. I have one kid, not a whole family. It's not what I was aiming for. But, the kid I have is healthy and happy, and I'm glad I get to see him as much as I do. And I'm glad I got, hopefully, knock on wood, as much life in front of me and as much life as he's got in front of him to spend with him, and, and all that kind of stuff. So, it's, this whole servant mindset comes off as something that's applauded, and it's it's a little bit of a sickness too. It's a little bit, and
it's a little self-serving for your ego too. You want to feel good about, there's no doubt about that. Yeah,
absolutely. Man.
So before I let you go, what's next? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
So, what am I working on? I mean, it sounds funny. I actually love this once a week writing on the Buffalo Bridge. That kind of got born out of, we used to do this coffee club that would get 100-ish people every single week. And it was just all founders or people that cared about the startup community in Buffalo. And when that stopped, we were like, well, one thing people got from there is they got a sense of the events going on and, the victories other startups were having, and that sense of, oh, wow, there's things going on here, and a sense of purpose. So we tried to recreate that in this email. And now I get to write in the intro, I got a platform just like you have here to get some things across that I think need to get gotten across. I really enjoy doing that. I'm doing a ton of mentorship and advising. I'm actually trying to whittle it down to something where it could be fewer points of more impact, but I'm still keeping a good amount, a half a day a week open just for the community, about 4 hours a week open for the community. And that's any Tom, Dick, or Harry that wants to, either be part of the startup community, start a company, start angel investing, whatever. And it gives me an opportunity to connect. And, I'm getting pretty deep. I made a handful of larger angel investments, and, One, there's a couple company I haven't invested in, but they're early that I'm helping kind of get going right now. So I'm being like the active board member, right? The activist board member. And like, how can I help? What can I do? You know, and besides that, you know, COVID's been, I haven't lost anybody to it. So again, knock on wood with that.
Good,
But
yeah.
like, you know, it's been really good because I've got to spend a lot of time. I'm spending an entire day a week with my son, you know, because
Nice.
he only goes to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So doing a ton of hiking and stuff like that. And then I'm to the position now where like I'm starting to, you know, I'm starting to feel on my fingernails and be like, there's not dirt there. And I kind of want there to be some dirt. So there's a couple things that I'm getting ready to think about, but you know, I just want to be creating again. I want to be at the early stage. I want to be making more magic happening, taking more shots on goal. I don't care what the success rate is. Just the feeling of hitting the puck or the ball, you know, like
Playing the game.
yeah, I love going to the driving range. I don't give a shit where the ball goes. It just feels great hitting it, right? You know, so
Or shooting skeet.
shooting skeet. That's right. I just love pulling that trigger. Right.
Yeah.
I can remember that I killed. That I shot them all. I can remember it that way. Right? So, yeah. So that's it, man.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck. I don't think you need it. I think you're making a lot of luck on yourself, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. And as always, I'm looking forward to spending more time. I can't wait for us to have an opportunity to hang out again and brainstorm how to rule the world.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really honored that you asked me to do this.
Shit. It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, we'll talk soon. And thanks again.
Thank you, buddy.